The year 2025 was a turning point for China's film industry, marking the decline of elitism and the rise of localism and popular culture. On March 15th, Nezha surpassed Star Wars: The Force Awakens, ranking among the top 5 in global box office history. This wasn't just the best achievement by a Chinese film to date, but also the only foreign film to break through Hollywood's dominance on the global charts. Among the 17 films that have grossed over 10 billion yuan worldwide, all except Nezha were Hollywood productions from the United States. Beyond its nationality, Nezha stood out significantly. Compared to the Hollywood blockbusters on the list, Nezha was an animated film without any major stars, and its director, Zhao Zi, had switched careers midstream without formal film school training. Just before Nezha's release, many experts were complaining about dismal box office performance and declaring that China's film industry had entered a winter period. So why did this unconventional film break Hollywood's monopoly? Why did it create a Chinese box office miracle, precisely during what experts considered an industry downturn? The answers to both questions are the same. For China, cinema was an imported art form from the West, due to the unique status Western culture held. Among Chinese intellectuals over past decades, China's film industry was assigned a special mission, inheriting an elitist atmosphere, and even developing a unique hierarchy of prestige. The most esteemed films either featured Eastern suffering narratives or carried strong Enlightenment themes. If Chinese audiences didn't appreciate or understand them, it was considered a lack of sophistication that needed improvement. For a film to achieve high box office returns, it had to be popular with the masses, meaning its core had to reflect localist popular culture. The significance of Nezha's success lies in revealing the tremendous commercial potential unleashed when Chinese cinema completes its transition from foreign elitism to local popular narratives. In fact, the rise of Hollywood blockbusters also represented the triumph of American localist popular culture. June 12, 1963, 20th Century Fox's big-budget production of Cleopatra had its premiere at a theater in New York City. This $44 million film was incredibly lavish for its time, with sets completely built from scratch, including a nearly full-scale replica of ancient Rome. However, American audiences weren't impressed by this well-produced historical epic. Ultimately, Cleopatra only earned $57.7 million in North America, pushing 20th Century Fox to the brink of bankruptcy, and it barely broke even 40 years later. This period was known as Old Hollywood, an era of elitist monopoly. Film production was dominated by 5 major studios, including MGM and Paramount. They used their industry position to establish content guidelines. In 1930, the film giants created the Hays Code, based on white Christian elite values. This restricted scenes containing sexuality and violence in films, while also requiring plots to align with Christian teachings. For example, the Hays Code included a 3-second kissing rule, meaning kiss scenes couldn't exceed 3 seconds, otherwise it would promote lust against Christian values. To avoid violations, many films had actors use interrupted kissing, breaking every 3 seconds. From the 1930s to 1950s, all of Hollywood worked under these production standards. This was also a time of crisis. As television became widespread in America during the 1950s, the traditional film industry faced tremendous challenges, with annual attendance dropping from 4 billion to about 1 billion. Under these circumstances, many traditional filmmakers still prided themselves on making grand epics and musicals. Cleopatra was a continuation of this approach. But crisis also meant opportunity and change. On March 14, 1972, a film about the Italian mafia premiered at Loew's State Theater in New York City, and this seemingly lowbrow film would make history. As a gangster film about Italian immigrants, The Godfather broke from elitist preaching persuading gangsters to abandon their criminal ways. It showcased the genuine and unique lifestyle of Italian immigrants in America through a family perspective. The Godfather became America's highest-grossing film that year, ultimately earning over $245 million in box office revenue against a $6 million budget. The Godfather. Afterwards, the 1970s saw the emergence of young filmmakers known as movie brats in America, who transitioned Hollywood cinema from elitism to popular culture, ushering in the new Hollywood era and achieving repeated box office miracles. Today, Chinese cinema is undergoing a similar shift from elitism to popular culture. The difference is, since film was imported to China as a Western cultural product, the elitism in China's film industry carries strong Western influences, which has nothing to do with whether the subject matter is refined or vulgar, but rather that many film professionals see themselves as Western messengers conveying superior culture to the Chinese people. When telling local stories, they don't genuinely understand traditional culture from a local perspective, which makes their work appear inauthentic. Faced with Chinese audiences who don't appreciate such content, some filmmakers don't reflect on themselves, but instead believe the audience needs to be educated. They even see this as proof of their work's necessity and superiority. However, these individuals with cultural test scores below 300 points actually lack sufficient cultural depth. They're merely posing as elites using information gaps and commercial packaging. Moreover, this group with questionable average intelligence insists on commenting on fields beyond filmmaking, promoting shallow slogans they've copied from unknown sources. If initially driven by curiosity about Western culture, such cultural intermediaries or comprador elitism could thrive. Then, as audiences watch more films, this fake, cheap elitism will inevitably be exposed. Although audiences don't verbally refute them, they can vote with their feet, which naturally explains the gradual decline of China's film market. Furthermore, in this environment, professional training has become a curse for film professionals. The historic mission of localizing Chinese cinema and moving beyond elitism, being accomplished by a director without formal training, is hardly surprising. However, throughout the entire film industry, from actors to screenwriters, everyone has been deeply influenced by comprador and elitist cultural backgrounds. The next director, without formal training, would find it very challenging to break industry conventions. This explains why the first Chinese film to break box office records was an animated feature. Because animation production doesn't require extensive interaction with existing film systems, the director's primary tool becomes technical expertise. In 1974, 28-year-old Spielberg was worrying on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. He realized it was impossible to tame a real great white shark and feature it in his movie. To achieve realistic viewing effects, Spielberg spent $750,000 building 3 mechanical sharks. This expensive decision yielded unexpectedly impressive results. The 3 mechanical sharks became the most eye-catching performers in Jaws, helping the film gross $470 million and become North America's top-grossing film at the time. Even after viewers left theaters, the Jaws effect became a cultural phenomenon that caused beach attendance to plummet across America for years. Right when Jaws was released, a small team of college students, artists and engineers, established a special effects company called Industrial Light and Magic in a Los Angeles warehouse. Nobody could have predicted this team would repeatedly break Jaws box office records with their effects. During Star Wars production, director Lucas pioneered using 3D animation in films, first applying computer-controlled model photography to space battle scenes. Audiences saw grand interstellar warfare on the big screen for the first time. Actors fought with reflective taped aluminum tubes during filming. With glowing effects, hand-painted frame by frame in post-production, making lightsabers an enduring pop culture icon. Star Wars cost $19,400,000 total, with over 80% spent on special effects shots. Its massive success launched Hollywood's blockbuster era featuring dazzling effects. Today, The global box office leader Avatar represents the pinnacle of various special effects technologies. However, its story core remains highly accessible, simply transplanting early Western colonial history to Pandora, replacing Native Americans with the Na'vi people. Technical factors also played crucial roles in Nezha 2's success. Before this, China had already produced excellent animated films, like Monkey King, Hero is Back, Jiangxia, and Chang'an. In some complex special effects production, they've already achieved internationally leading standards. And Nezha 2 represents the culmination of China's accumulated animation production technology. The entire film contains nearly 2,000 special effects shots, including more than 30 of the most difficult S-level shots. During Nezha 2's production phase, we saw a long list of 138 animation companies. These animation companies, much like the Universal Armor in the film, collectively supported Nezha 2's success. According to reports, initially, director Zhao Zi had considered outsourcing some crucial effects to Hollywood teams, but the Hollywood teams, through multiple layers of subcontracting, produced unsatisfactory results. Therefore, director Zhao Zi switched to domestic teams and demanded they relentlessly perfect the special effects, with shots undergoing countless revisions, ultimately appearing on screen as spectacular battle sequences. 200 million characters moving simultaneously, the Battle of Chentang Pass featuring millions of monsters, and chains swaying like hair in the wind, true visual marvels. Animation is a film genre that demands high production technology, which, for Chinese cinema, has become a unique advantage. Over the past several decades of development, China's technological catch-up and surpassing have yielded the most tangible results. This area is least affected by various ideological interferences. Director Zhao Zi could focus solely on refining the script, and then consider how to achieve it through technical means, without needing to discuss character interpretation with elite, classically trained actors. This largely eliminated the elitist practices accumulated over decades in China's film industry, enabling the team to create localized characters and stories beloved by the masses. Its greater significance lies in pointing a transformative direction for Chinese cinema's development. In the era of globalization, mainstream international culture serves as a tool to maintain Western-centric world order. When Western film culture spread to China, it wasn't a free gift. A significant portion of contemporary Chinese cinema was unfortunately tasked with a hidden mission: to shape a China image that meets Western expectations for the world's ruling powers, and further, to create atmosphere for the tragic endings they desire to see, even though China has achieved indisputable historic progress in visible, easily measurable fields like economy, technology, and healthcare, in these quantifiable areas. In cultural and spiritual domains, Western nations still firmly occupy the moral high ground, attracting numerous cultural workers who voluntarily flock toward these heights. They wield authority borrowed from the West, while seeking moral superiority over their compatriots. If someone doesn't like what they hear, they'll even criticize them, asking why they can't accept criticism. Actually, if they hadn't voluntarily become part of the global ruling class, as artistic professionals, seeing darkness and revealing ugliness would be perfectly justifiable. However, they pretend to challenge authority while actually being backed by the world's most powerful authority. They claim to expose injustice, but in reality, they're concealing the world's greatest injustices. They appear to advocate for people and resist oppression when actually they're defending the world's most severe oppression. For many domestic cultural elites, their greatest aspiration is to become honored global citizens, earning recognition from the civilized world. This proves they've moved beyond primitive thinking and shed inferior status, achieving refinement. With this mindset, it's no surprise Chinese films can't break into global box office charts. Not surprising at all, because no matter what they claim, audiences only pay for what they genuinely enjoy watching. Looking at Hollywood's development history, films only achieved commercial success when they moved beyond elitism to popular culture. This ushered in the era of blockbuster commercialization, continuously setting new box office records. But Chinese cinema's de-elitization faces unique challenges. In the United States, the movie brats who led new Hollywood's development from the 60s to 80s were mostly film school graduates. In China, this historic task fell to self-taught creators, a phenomenon that's both lamentable and fortunate. Nezha 2's emergence signaled the end of an era where unqualified cultural elites forced enlightenment upon the nation. They reaped their era's benefits, but showed no basic respect for their own nation and history. Unable to comprehend Chinese culture, they also failed to properly tell Chinese stories. Many of them still hold powerful positions in the film industry, controlling the definition of what's good and bad, but the baton of box office performance will eventually eliminate this group. Of course, before that happens, Chinese cinema still has a long way to go. Especially live-action films need to abandon the bad habits that have plagued the industry for decades, and it's still difficult to build an entirely new team. It's predictable that the next phenomenal Chinese film will likely still be a technology-focused animated movie, or a science fiction film that emphasizes special effects. After all, the mountain of preconceived notions in people's minds makes it hard to expect that generation of elitist filmmakers to voluntarily change their views. The new era ultimately requires new people to create it.